So with that, we're going to move into our REVS Town Hall. And again, we are just really, really excited for this conversation. We're excited that you're with us. As we like to joke about, everybody loves a PowerPoint, especially those of us here in Washington, D.C. And so we're actually going to run through a little bit of an informal presentation to kind of update everybody on where we are with REVS and where we're going and what to look for and why we're doing it, what we're hoping to accomplish. So I'm going to share my screen and then we're going to open up the conversation from that point on. So, those of you who've been participating in this program know exactly what we're talking about with REVS. Those of you who are new to our work, you'll catch up pretty quickly. Hopefully this presentation and this conversation is something that could be sent to lots of folks when we put it up on the website next week, just as a real quick orientation into what we're doing and why we're doing it and how people can intersect in it. So again, if you think about what is the mission and the vision, why are we doing this? This is a little bit of a revision of what we started off with last year. Again, we started REVS in April of 2020 when there was a great amount of uncertainty about everything. And now there's some things that we can be pretty certain about. We know live music is reopening. And we also know that as people who care deeply about music and fit into different places in the community, we can't be passive about it. We can't sit back and just kind of wait for things to happen. We have to know, when are we going to reopen? Or what is reopening going to look like? What does it mean to have meaningful collaboration? How do we pull together venues, public health, government, musician, workers, audiences? And how do we talk about this and engage our key stakeholders, which we define as musicians, music workers, and audiences? How do we play offense? What does that look like? So as we kind of take that mission and move into activating that this year, we have these kind of 6 core goals. So again, we want to continue the support of our 2020 pilots. We want to revise and expand our national leadership team to bring some extra perspectives and vision into our group. We want to have a more concrete staffing and outreach plan, so we have some certainty and clarity about what exactly the REVS work is. We want to invite a new group of cities to join in as pilots. We want to share information and resources with all levels of government. We'll be talking a lot about that part today. And again, we want to be doing this public and stakeholder education and outreach campaign this spring and summer, because as we always say, REVS at one level is about the work that's happening with hundreds of people across these 17 pilots, but really it's about how does that information get translated and shared, because everybody has to do this work, and people who are not involved in a REVS pilot still have to reopen as quickly and safely as possible when the time is right, and they have to communicate about it. So we really want to be thinking about how do we share the findings and the energy and the activities of our REVS pilots more widely. So we are thrilled to roll out and announce our 2021 leadership team. Again, half of the group are Music Policy Forum board members. Again, me from Washington, D.C., Kate Becker from Seattle, Hakeem Bellamy, who is a deputy in the Cultural Service Department in Albuquerque, New Mexico, Anna Chalenza from Georgetown University, Ashley Keaton from the Ella Project in New Orleans. Then we're thrilled that we've added Sean Lynch and Curtis Monroe, and we'll hear from Curtis in a few minutes. They are the co-chairs of NEVA's National Reopening Task Force. So we're solidifying our alignment with NEVA and looking to coordinate with them. Again, we'll talk more about that in a few minutes with Curtis. Dina Morris is joined our national leadership team. She'll be joining us in the program in a few minutes as well. Dina is a public policy expert with extensive history in the United States Senate and at the Centers for Disease Control, and has been the co-lead of the Seattle and King County REVS pilot for the last year. Cole Williams is with us today. We'll hear from Cole in a little bit. She is a community activist and artist based out in New Orleans. And Zach Schwartz, many of you know from Zach's life as a rock and roller through the band Rogue Wave. He also is a messaging and communications expert who has been bringing a lot of leadership as a kind of thought partner as we think about our communication strategies. So again, the goal of expanding and revising the leadership team is that we need more ideas. We need fresh ideas. We need different perspectives. And we're excited that these folks are helping us shape that thinking. So again, for those of you who have followed this initiative, this list of pilot communities is nothing new. These are the 11 pilot cities that have been working for the last year, both locally and as a national cohort and as collaborators and thought partners to prepare for reopening as quickly and safely as possible. We are thrilled to announce that these communities are joining us as 2021 pilots: Anchorage, Alaska, Boise, Idaho, the Northwest Arkansas region, city of Pittsburgh, city of Sacramento, and the city of Tucson. We'll be hopefully hearing from some of those folks today in the program as well. But we've been doing our onboard meetings, welcoming them to the program and to the initiative, and we just couldn't be more excited to connect the work and thinking that's been happening for the last year in our original pilots with these additional cities. So what are we doing? Really, it kind of gets in these three buckets that we've talked about. Again, the first is this engagement with and response to our local, state, and regional health protocols. Who's making these decisions? What are the decisions? What's the timeline? What are the obligations of venues or festivals? What information is being used to make these decisions about what these protocols look like? So again, it's not just being in the Rolodex and getting advanced word. It's really trying to help inform those regional health leaders as they are making these decisions. The second is really being mindful about what does it look like to have meaningful community engagement with our stakeholder groups? How do we think about stakeholder groups? How are we talking to government? How are we talking with musicians and music workers and venue employees? And then audiences, because we know that reopening is going to be hard. This is one of the hardest things that we've ever tried to do. I mean, it was really hard. It has been incredibly hard to shut down. It's going to be hard to reopen. Our music ecosystems were vulnerable to begin with, and we can't take for granted that audiences are just going to come flocking back in at a level that we need for the economics of the sector to work. So that gets that third bucket, which are these communications and outreach strategies, targeted messaging, developing assets, using public relations experts, thinking about paid and social media. I'm going to talk in more detail about that in a minute. But this is basically what our pilots have been thinking about for the last year. How do we do this work? And how do we prepare for what is now coming, which is the actual reopening process? So in terms of kind of looking under the hood of REVS, this work is really scalable, and part of our job over the next month or so is really sort of putting some parameters around what we can execute as a leadership group and as a nonprofit. So again, tier one is the work that we've been doing for a year in terms of managing our cohort, promoting ideas through this program, bridging communities, things like that. We are going to look to build some resources and try to increase our capacity to do more things we'd like to do. We would like to be doing more webinars and outreach efforts to different networks that are not deeply embedded in this work, but would benefit from understanding what we're up to. Some of that is talking to other arts disciplines. Some of that is talking to, again, networks of regional arts organizations or conference of mayors, things like that. We would love to have a help desk. We would love to have a staff on board who can just be a resource for people who are not part of our REVS initiative, but need to do this work. And then what we'd love to do, and I'm not sure we're going to be able to do, but we'd love to do is really professionalize our audience engagement campaign, because again, programs like this are really meaningful for us and they're great, and we really enjoy them, but we know the limitation of punk rock. And if you really believe in what you're doing, you've got to kind of put resources and a little bit more intention around how are you hitting audiences, what are you saying to them. So, we're looking to see what that could look like in a couple of different scenarios. So finally, I want to drill down more quickly at the end before we bring in our guests and talk about what are these communication strategies that we're talking about, because we've talked in concept for a year about the need to do this effective outreach to audiences and our other stakeholders. What does that really mean? And how do we put shape to that? So what we would like to do this year, and I think we're going to see from a number of our pilots, are case studies and models about different tools and different tactics that we can and should be deploying to try to effectively reach these audiences. And just as a thought experiment, we can put them into these four buckets. Again, this is not the way the world works. These things all interconnect, so they can't really silo them. But a way to think about it is, digital marketing. So again, in our communities, our venues know who buys tickets to shows. They know who the audience is. They have their email addresses. What are we sending them? What are our messages? How do we frame it? What does it look like? What is the ask that we're asking them to do? How does that connect in with our web resources and our social media strategies? So we're looking for some of our pilots to put some resources, and if we can help raise money, we'll put some resources into digital marketing strategies to kind of provide examples of different models of doing this. We talk a lot about paid and earned media and working with professional public relations experts and publicists that know how to get attention in a local market, get interviews placed, get articles placed, op-eds, public service announcements, using the tools of mass media to reach these audiences. A third kind of bucket that we talk about are video assets. How do we replicate the experience that audiences, musicians, and music workers are going to have to go into venues for the first time? How are the venues oriented? What do the pods look like? What is security going to look like? Like, how can we make this more real for audiences so they can actually see it and don't just have to go sight unseen into what is, for many, is going to be a very unsettling and potentially kind of traumatic experience to be going back into venues for the first time in a long time. And the fourth kind of bucket is print campaigns and really playing into the tremendous resources of visual artists in our pilot cities to think about, is there a way to create or to commission some original work that could be posters, t-shirts, print ads, mobile ads, outdoor, to kind of reinforce the spirit of what does it mean to come back to music and do this together in a way that we really are excited about and celebrate. So that's kind of the range of stuff that we're doing, kind of a brief introduction. And